Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. So if you've watched any of my past tutorials, you know coding wise I've got it pretty down. I'm pretty good at coding, right? But when it comes to artwork, I'm not so good at it. It's not something that I really put a lot of time into. I probably could learn it if I put, bunch of time into it. But I much prefer the coding side of it, the storytelling, the world building, stuff like that. So we've only got some basic UI that we've added in at the moment, and anything that a plugin has made. And Synty have sponsored this video and sent me the new interface pack across for the Fantasy UI. Big thank you to Synty for sending that over. Let's take a look. Now we're probably going to make changes to it eventually, but it's got everything we need. All we need to do is add functionality to it, and we'll have an epic UI in our game. Because my games never looked that good. I've made main menus before that I've made from scratch. Look, that's my pirate game compared to that one. It looks so much better, and that's what happens when you have a professional artist. They can give you really nice UI. What we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at this pack and we're going to look at implementing it into our game. Looking at little tips here and there, like what to do in certain areas, how to replace plugins so that it keeps upgrading nice and easy to do. And we're going to be able to add this epic system into it. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is basically go and download it. Now you have got two choices. You can either just buy it outright, in which case I do have an affiliate link in my description if you are going to purchase it. I have an affiliate link for most of the Synty store because it's a fantastic company and I support them. The other option is you can go with the Synty Pass, which is a subscription service, and it gets you access to everything Synty does. Either way. Once you've downloaded it, you're basically going to get your Unreal folder like this. Now, there's some instructions that we are going to come back to later because that's got some important information on for when we move it into a new project. And then we've got everything else. So I've loaded this up in Unreal 5.6. It's for Unreal 5.3, but it works completely fine. And we can basically just come and click play on the demonstration map. And we'll be presented straight away with the menu for the UI interface. And we've got a lot of buttons we can go across and click just to check the pack out. But exploring the pack is the best way to experience it. As you can see, first thing, we've got all of our hotbars. I haven't even got this far in my game yet, and we've already got a big boost in the right direction, which is fantastic. Everything's interactable to show you what happens if you toggle it, which is great. And we can just keep going across and seeing all the health bars and everything, which is a very nice touch. I haven't got a health bar in my game yet. I do need one. Weapon icons, that's something I've primitively got at the top right. Icons of people, which will work great for dialogue. Compasses, we do have a compass we can look at replacing, same with the mini-maps. Weapon wheels could be a nice one. I've not thought about that one yet, but we could eventually add a weapon wheel into our game. Dialogue, this is one we do have. There is a slight bug here, but we can fix that minorly if we need to. But look how much nicer this dialogue is going to look with it all integrated into our game. And we don't have to use all of the UI. We can pick and choose, but this is what I'm going for. Something like this. I won't have all of this. I'm probably not going to have these companion drop downs. I don't need it. And I probably won't have these quick equipment things. My game doesn't need some of that advanced. But the small weapon icons, the compass, the quests, it all just looks really nice. And it's all fully animated. And that's what we can go for. And as you just go across the packs, you'll see they've built it for different aspects. So you've got the auto-saving logo, which we absolutely could add in. We've got a bunch of notifications, which we do have when we walk near an area. It should pop up. We've got times. We've got quest updates, scroll notifications, and all sorts of stuff. So once you've browsed through and you've got a relatively good idea of what you need and what you want, you can come back to the menu and you've got a bunch of skip parts if you want to. So we can say skip to master sprites and we'll see a bunch of outlines we can use for different things. We've got icons, which is going to be very useful. But let's jump straight into it. So the easiest way I found to do it, and of course everybody's got their own different ways, is I close the project and I come and open up in my file, I'll come to the content folder and I'll just cut the Synty folder, come into my main project and just paste it, just like that. In a moment, Unreal will go, hey, we've detected thousands of changes, let's just import it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but now we can come down and we have our Synty folder with our HUD built in like that. We've got the map, so if we come and load it up, you may see that it'll glitch out at first, which is something I mentioned at the start. So as you can see, it does not look as good as it really did before. And this is the README file I mentioned before. So if we come back to the root of the project, we've got this PDF here. And this has some instructions on it right at the top about custom projects. And it's got some more info as well that you might find interesting. But the ones we really need is these important notes about custom projects. We need to set these in project settings. So in our game, if we just go to edit project settings and search for DPI scale rule, you'll see we have this one as shortest side. Just set this to scale to fit and then set the scale to fit rule design screen size to 3840 by 2160. Now the reason I believe we do this is the design screen size is what size your UI is being designed for. So we've designed it for a 4K monitor. Well, we haven't. Synty have designed it for a 4K monitor. So we're saying, Unreal, this is what you're referencing. All your UI is 4K. Perfect. And then scale to fit means it scales it down or up to stretch it to the monitor size it needs to. It does mean if you go to 8K, it's going to double stretch it. But equally, it means if you go to 1920, 1366, it will scale it down, making it look really nice and keeping all the details. So I'm pretty sure you don't have to restart Unreal. Yep, no, we're straight in luck, and you can see we already have a bunch of great options. It is using my default player controller, which is something like you can see WUI up there, but that's something we can look at fixing later. So you can see we now have it up and running. If we jump back into our main world, if we jump into our game, now that we've changed the design size, you may see that your existing UI goes a bit funky. So if we jump into our game, and you can see the shaders are still loading, but you'll see some of the existing UI has gone a bit funky. And that's purely because we've changed the design size of it. To be fair, this isn't too bad, to be honest. I kind of like the bigger size. It does need a little bit of fixing, like this scaling across and this up a bit. We can see also dialogue and the interface. It's gone a bit funky. So that's something we're going to fix as well. But I think since we're going to be using the majority of the Synty UI, we should make our UI match the Synty's, adapting all of the Synty ones to ours. So how do we go about fixing this? Because we don't want to spend a long time completely working over every single UI when we are moving it to Synty's. Eventually, it's just going to take some time. So there is actually a quick fix we can do, but it also is kind of something you should be doing when designing UIs anyway to make it fit different screen sizes. And that's going to be using scale boxes and size boxes to set your reference sizes. So I'm going to come into my UI and I'm going to open up my normal HUD. And typically, most people will have an in-game HUD, and this is mine. But you can see it's really gone and stretched itself out and looks a bit odd since we've applied the basic resolution. I'm going to come up to the top and under fill screen, I'm just going to set it to custom and make sure it equals the 4K version like that. So this is what Unreal is trying to render our UI as, this big 4K thing that looks odd. What I'm going to actually do is I'm going to select my canvas panel that surrounds my entire UI, and I'm actually going to come and wrap it in a size box, and I'm going to tell it your base size is actually the size I developed it for, which was 1920 by 1080. And you'll see nothing's changed, but that's okay. Because the next thing we're going to do is wrap the size box in a scale box. And now you can see our UI suddenly looks a lot better. And what this is doing is the scale box is getting all of our content and stretching it to the size it needs to be. It's scaling it up. So you can see the stretch option is scale to fit. So if we are on a 4K monitor but our UI is 1920, it will stretch it up. Which, because we're simulating a 4K monitor, that's what it's doing. However, in order for it to scale it up properly, we've got to give it almost an aspect ratio to say, hey, this is the scale that we designed it for. And that's what the size box is for, where we come in and say, your 1920 by 1080. If we remove this, you'll see it'll go really wacky because all it's doing is scaling each element up. But since we've said, hey, all of this was designed and placed for 1920, it scales it up properly. And now, for us, these two nodes are just a little quick fix to make the vast majority of our UI work better. But in realistic games, if you're working on a project with a UI, you really should be scaling it to the correct size, so when different people play it, it will work correctly on their monitors. But you'll see now if I load this project up, you'll see we now have the HUD and everything properly. It looks a bit odd on my screen, it's not lined up properly. That's just because I need to go into my actual resolution, so full screen, by hitting F11. But now you'll see if I go to the inventory, it's all scaled properly. If I run over here and talk to this guy, you can see the interaction is back to normal, and I can talk to him. And I absolutely need to fix my cameras, but you can see it is all indeed working again. So let's go start adding the Synty UI in then. So I'm going to start with replacing my own widgets first, so we'll just do a couple of them, such as the weapon prompt here. Let's replace this with a custom one from Synty. So I'm going to come back to my Synty folder, Fantasy HUD, and this might be a good time to actually have two Unreal projects open so you can just quickly compare side by side. But for the purpose of the video, I'll just do it on here. But I'm going to come and load up their map. I've still got my HUD open on a new tab, and we can play it. And let's have a look which HUD we can use. So we've got Adventure HUD 01. Let's jump into that. So you can see we've got our options down here. We're basically just going to look through it and figure out which one we actually want for our game. Now for me, looking through them, I think I'm going to go with the basic one down here. It literally just a little graph. It shows your ammo if anything, and it shows your weapon. We'll not question why he's got a staff, but he's holding a sword, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, so we're going to come in and add this here. So the good thing about the Synty UI is it does indeed tell you down the bottom. So we want 07 Demo Fantasy HUD Adventure. So if we come to the widgets and search for 07, you'll see we have it right here inside the widget samples folder. So we can open this up and you'll see because this is a sample pack, the UI isn't inherently here. What it's done is giving you a child actor for the HUD. So you'll see if we hide this screen HUD Adventure 2, it hides everything, and then we've just got the basic demo version if you wish. So if we come and open up this HUD Adventure, you'll see we now have all of the HUD parts we want. We of course don't need to add everything because we've got plugins to drive a lot of this, so we need to mix and match where we put it. But for now, I can come to this weapon part here, and you can see it's just a single blueprint again. So if we open this one up, this widget, we can just double check that it's got everything or nothing that we need. And I think we're going to be okay to just pretty much use this as it is. So I'm going to come and copy this HUD here back to my widget. I will paste it into the canvas panel. I did kind of like where it was, to be honest, in Synty's. But the thing I'm going to do is actually mix and match this a little bit. So I'm going to wrap my scale box in a canvas panel, just for now. You're not technically supposed to use canvas panels a lot because it can cause performance hits. But while we're in development, we know we can fix it eventually. And the reason I'm wrapping it is at the moment this has scaled up massively because we're telling it we've developed it for 1920, so it's technically huge now, and then we're scaling up even more. So we need to actually move this outside of the main canvas panel of the scale box, and you can see it's now shrunk down a lot better. They positioned it at the bottom corner here, and I do kind of like that, so I'm going to follow that just for now. So I'm just going to anchor it to the bottom corner, and I believe they've added an offset, so we'll just set an offset of 100, of a minus 100, and 190 from the bottom. So it's just roughly in line where it was on there. We may tweak that later. You'll notice it's conflicting with my minimap, so let's move that to just another side for now, so I'll put it over there. Now at the moment I don't have a weapon selector built in, so you'll notice if I try to delete it, it'll say it's in use. Now this is a great time to talk about the reference finder. So in Unreal, if you ever have a variable, a function, event, anything you don't know where it is, if you simply right click it, choose find references by name, that will search the entire script you're in to see if it's used. So we can see immediately it's used right here, where I hide it if I'm in jail. So we can actually replace this weapon overlay with the new Synty version. So I'll just make sure it's a variable, and we will come and drag this in and assign that here instead. So now if I go in jail, it will hide that UI. And now I should be safe to delete it. But before I do, the other options are find by name all, which will search your entire project to see where this weapons overlay is referenced. And then class members search for where this specific class of overlay is used, which is less helpful inside a UI, but for things like blueprints, it's very useful. So we can now delete that, and we've officially replaced the first part of our UI. So you'll see if I play it now, I do indeed have the weapon. It does look out of place at the moment because I don't actually have that weapon, but once we start looking at weapon equipment and such, we can start actually plugging into it and making it work for us. So that's how you replace your UI. Next, we're going to look at replacing your plugins UI. So this is going to be for any plugin you've integrated, like an inventory, dialogue, stuff like that, anything like that, that has its own UI that you actively use, and how we go about replacing it. So this is entirely going to depend on which plugin you're using, because every plugin is going to be different. But it will all come down to they will probably use some type of widget. So on mine, I use a bunch of different plugins, as people may know. The biggest ones are the narrative plugins, because I just love the narrative plugins. So I'm not going to sit here and show you how to do every single plugin, because my plugins are completely different to yours. If you're following along with the narrative one and this exact Synty pack, it'll be helpful. But what I'm rather going to do is share some tips and ways you can do it, which may work for you. They'll have some disadvantages, but equally we can look at alternative ways which may have some advantages or disadvantages as well. I'm actually going to start with my dialogue plugin, I think. So I've gone and loaded up the other 5.6 project here to look at. And in the Synty UI, if we click the dialogue version, we have this option here. Now these are a bit broken here, which is a bug I've reported. So let's just quickly fix that. So I'm going to press Ctrl P and just search for dialogue. And you'll see we have the 05 Fantasy Components dialogue. I'm going to open that. And you can see we roughly have it just like we did with the previous one. So I'll click around on the options and you can see we have this dialogue choices here. I'll hide it and show it, so we're definitely in the right place. I'll then open this childhood up and you'll see we have a bunch of options here, which is just the basic part. So I'll select one of them and I'll hide it, and you can see each one is a specific answer. So I'll open this answer up and you'll see we have this dialogue response box here. And if I hide it, that's all I'm doing. I'm just clicking down it to see which one's taking all the room up. So it appears to be this one right here. So I'll open this up and you can see there's a massive gap right here next to the content where it's shoved across to the side for some reason. So all I'm going to do is tell it to start at the beginning. That's all I'm going to do, just hit that. I don't specifically know why it's like that for now, but you can see it does indeed fix the issue so it looks neater. Like so. And now we have a real one selection, and it all looks to be okay even with the inputs. So we're okay. So we have two dialogue choices we can pick from depending on your game. Now I kind of like a mix and match of both of these, to be honest. I like the little nameplate up here versus this one over here, but I prefer these options. So this is the best part about the Unity interfaces, is they are very modular. So I'm actually going to mix and match between these two, I think. So I'm going to modify my plugin so when I'm in dialogue, it says the name of the person we're talking to in this plate. I'm going to see if that works with this dialogue here, but I've got a feeling we're going to have to use this one here because I don't think it'll work right. But then we are going to use these player options. So I'm going to plonk this over the other screen just so I can see it there as a reference, but we will keep it in mind. So there's two ways you can go around modifying a plugin's UI, typically. And it entirely depends on whether you're planning to upgrade the plugin or not. So I know that I do constantly keep my narrative plugins up to date, because I help fix the bugs. It's nice to have the latest version. So if I come and open the BP3 narrative overlay, you'll see it's glitched out a little bit, but that's okay. We'll just come and set it to custom 1920 by 1080, which is what its design size was. It looks normal again, look. But don't forget when we render this, we're scaling it, so that's okay. And this is where it comes in and it adds all the dialogue. So in the current dialogue line, I believe the code is narrative.emphasis speaker. I believe it's like that. Yeah, there you go. So that's how the dialogue currently works. It pastes the dialogue into here. So we could just come in the Synty dialogue that we need. So I believe it's this one here. We could copy it and we could come and paste it into here, and that would be okay. However, the problem with that you run into is you're then modifying the plugin directly, meaning when you come and overwrite it, you will lose those changes, which is not great. You should always be wary when upgrading anyway, out of anything, so always make a backup 100% of your entire thing. If you have plugins in the engine, back them up all the time. However, if you're not planning on upgrading it, then you can just do this. You're completely fine. Because if you're on, say, version 2.9 of a plugin, and you know version 3 is going to be a big update, you might not need that. So you might ignore it. Look at how many developers are still in Unreal 4. Because it just works for them. The other option you've got is you could take it up by update. So some updates might not touch the UI at all. So when you update it, you could just tell it to not change the UI folder. So you just get the new plugin. So for example, in your plugin folder here, you can see if you open up any plugin you've got, you will see it's typically broken down into a subset of folders. So the binaries and the intermediate, that's what Unreal automatically generates. You can ignore those. You need them, but you can ignore them. Then you've got the content, resources, and source. The content is all of the UI, the icons, the assets, stuff like that. So you can see in the widgets folder, these are all the assets I've got open right now. So if you don't replace the content folder, or even don't replace the UI folder, or even the specific UI, Unreal won't update it. It will keep it as the same as the old one. And then likewise, the other folders, resources, I think they were meant to be for icons, but I have no idea what they're used for. So I keep it, but I tend to never use it. And the source is your C++, which is going to be where the most of your changes are going to be. But it does depend on the plugin. If there's a bug fix for the UI, you kind of don't have a choice. If you want the bug fix, you need the changes to the UI. Now, you can, of course, use a diff view. So if you have source control enabled, if you've seen my upgrading plugin tutorial, I go over how the diff view works, where you can compare a widget, a blueprint's previous version, and the latest version and know the changes. The other option is you can just make a list of the changes, but if you're making hundreds of changes, you don't want to be repeating them each time. So this leads on to the second point. So the first point is wrapped in a ton of caveats. You can do it, but you need to be careful. If you're ever going to upgrade, you're going to lose your changes potentially. You might not always, but the chance is there. So the other option you've got is to make a copy of the UI. Now this does protect you more, that if I come and make a copy of this one here and start using this everywhere, I can make changes to my local copy and not this one, and meaning when I upgrade the plugin, this doesn't matter. It does protect you in that way. But the problem with it is, if this UI gets an update for a bug fix, your UI is not going to have that fix. So for example, if I come in here and go, oh, this speaker text is visible by default, I don't need that, so I'm going to remove it, compile, save, I submit the plugin to Epic, perfect. It downloads. Your copied version of this is not going to have that change. And that's where you run into an issue. Normally, for a blueprint, I'd say just make a child of it and edit it. But for widgets, it kind of sucks. It doesn't work the same way. So if I come and make a new widget here, widget blueprint, and I'll base it off of my narrative 3 overlay, and we'll just call it test for now and open it up, you can see I've got nothing. I can't really click on the UI and modify the font or anything like that. I don't specifically know the reason why we can make children of widgets but not modify any of the children. It would make sense, like you can modify the variables and stuff, but that's not going to help you if I wanted to change this font, for example. So you kind of out of luck with making children as well, only on widgets. There's your options, really. It's not great for UI. This is a common issue we have in the narrative Discord as well. A lot of people complain, I've made UI changes, I've updated the plugin and I've lost my UI changes. That's how Unreal works, unfortunately. It sucks. for the UI part. Yeah. So what we're going to do today is the way that I always recommend that is if you are making huge amount of changes, copy the UI and deal with the manual updates yourself. It's not too hard to have two of these open of old and new and just roughly compare the code. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to press Ctrl B to find my UI, and I'm going to come into my UI folder. I'll go into widgets, right click, and I'll just do plugins. And I'm just going to set mine up like narrative tails, which is my dialogue, and I'm going to copy it in here. So I'll press Ctrl B, I'll scroll up to my tails folder, and I'll just make an exact copy of it there, like so. And I'm going to rename it to narrative 3 overlay underscore local. You can call it anything you want, but the reason I'm renaming it is if I do Ctrl P and search for BP narrative 3 overlay, I'm going to get 2. I don't want 2. Whereas if I know, okay, so that's the base one, because I know that's what it's called. If I search for that, I can see local. I know that's my copy. Just a little thing. You can really call it anything you want. But now I can come in here and I can make any changes I need to based on the Synty UI here. So I'm going to click around until I can figure out where this nameplate comes from. So I'll hide the screenshot and I will hide the canvas panel. Where's it coming from? There we are. So it's this one here, dialog box 2. The name is floating above it, but that's okay because we do actually need that one almost on its own. So I'm going to come and copy this one and I'll come and paste it into my narrative 3 overlay here inside the base canvas. So you can see it's positioned it all the way over there. I don't really want it there. Where has Synty put it? Synty has put it off to the side like that. Yeah, kind of like that actually. So we'll try and see where it works like. So I'm going to come and anchor it at the right side like that. And then I will anchor it up a little bit. So I'll just probably set the position Y to something like -300 just to move it up. You'll notice that it's insanely bigger than ours. And that's because our original UI was designed for 1920 by 1080. So we're going to resize this to the 4K version. Like so. And you'll notice our Quest UI is really small. Don't worry about that for now because we're moving it across. You can see I've got it here. So I'll keep jumping across to Synty's one and just double checking it. So it's moved across a little bit as well. And I believe their up amount is more than mine. So we'll do that as well. There we go. And to be honest, I think I've made a small mishap here. We could just use the Synty's blueprint here and then go and modify it. But it's actually going to be less work if we take the innards and reuse them. And what I mean is, we need to replace this dialog line here and this name. We need to place our text in those. But at the moment, everything's referencing this current dialog line box here. So we're going to have to find every single place that's using current dialog line and move it into there. And that includes visibility showing, text editing, text showing, all stuff like that. That's a lot of work. So instead, if we come and grab the innards of this entire thing, so just all of it, I don't think it's got any animations on it. It doesn't. Has it got any code? Nope, so we're all good. We'll copy the innards back to our narrative 3 local, and I'm going to delete, I'm going to paste in the new one, and I'm going to position it in the same place we just had it, and I'll make sure to come and grab the sizing that was applied here, so 1000 by 220, but we may change that. And there we go. So now it looks neater, but now we can just straight take the text and move ours into there instead. So that's called TXT dialog, and it's got its own color, which we'll sort out later. So I'm actually just going to grab that and move it just down here for now. Then I'm going to come and get our current dialog line, at least for my plugin, and I'm going to add it directly in place of where it needs to go. I'll check the size and everything. So it's just size to content. So I'll take size to content, it shrinks down. That's okay. But we can see the narrative ones, and yours may use it as well. It has its own text style set, so I'll open that up. And it's got its default text in here. For the Synty one, it's just got this orange text and the font of the custom HUD font. So I'll come back to the narrative one, I'll set the colour, and then I'll set the font as well. And all of the font settings, can I just copy the entire font? I think I can. We'll hit compile and save, and let's test it out on our local one. So we'll just add some text. Speaker, hello. So you can see it's really shrunk it down now. I just hit compile and it fixed it. But there you can see, we now have it in the same place. So I can delete the old dialog off for Synty, we don't need it. And now we've got just this one here. Technically, this will work as it is. So if I come back to my WB HUD, and instead of my narrative 3 overlay, I will right click it, replace with, and have I got my local one here? Nope, it won't find it, so that's fine. We'll just come and search for local. I'll drag my local version in. I'll expand it to full size like so. Don't worry about it hanging off there. That's purely because it's in our scale box. We know it no longer needs to be, so I can move it outside of the scale box like so. And now it syncs up a lot nicer. Let's remove the BP3 old overlay, so the old plugin. And officially, we've technically done it. So if I start it up now, you can see it's still on the screen, which is something we need to fix. But if I come and speak to the shopkeeper,
come to see my wares.
His text is actually in there.
Do you need any help?
It needs some
yes,
work,
actually I do.
but it is actually working. And that's all this process is going to be. So let's come and add some minor fixes to this then. So firstly, we want to hide the entire dialog content window. So I'll come and rename this size box to dialog window. I'll promote it to a variable. And then all I'm going to do is find everywhere this current dialog line is used. So I'll find the references again. You can see it'll be used in a lot of places, but that's okay. So I'll come to here and you can see it's setting the text right there, but it's also adding the speaker name on. So all I'm going to do is take the name, this fantasy warrior frame. I'll promote it to a variable. Then I'll open it up so we can see what the name of the text is. So you can see the name of the witch is txt name. So I'll just grab that as a variable, head into the graph. I will drag the txt name in. I will simply do set text. And I'll use the function one just in case anybody ever overrides it. And I will just straight plug in the speaker's name, which is this one right here. And instead, I can just plug dialog line straight in like that. I can delete that off. Hit compile and save. And I'm just basically going to move down and double check that the name is always there. So we've got one more to add here on the player. So I'll just paste it in, drag it across, and I will connect the speaker name to it. And the dialog line, I'll delete these nodes off and just add the text. And with that minor change, we've got the speaker text working. And like I say, this is entirely dependent on your plugin, because your plugin will be very different to mine, potentially. You might be using the same one. But this time, if I speak to him, the name is at least going to sit correctly.
Do you need any help? Yes,
and there is some more stuff we have to do to it. Just minor things that we're always going to have to touch up. Such as in the player name, if I remove this off and just paste it in, it was appending some unique stuff that for narrative that we don't need in this one. So the issue we had with the text is if you come and add a decent amount of text, it wasn't fully scaling it properly. So what I'm going to do is just tell it to scale all the way across like that. Of course, if we add even more text, we're going to potentially run into some issues, but that's something we can look at fixing properly if we need to. But for mine, most of the dialogue is pretty short, so that will fix it. And even if I do smaller dialogue, it's still in the center like it needs to be. So I'll empty that by default. And the only other issue we had was this dialogue window was always visible. Simply jump into my graph and I'm going to search for where this current dialogue line was made visible and invisible. So right on dialog begin, it's setting the current dialog line to be visible. I'm going to replace this with my dialog window instead. So it makes the entire window invisible. And I'll do the same on dialog finished. So I just drag the dialog window in and I can come back to the designer, make sure by default, this window is in fact collapsed. So it's not visible. Compile, save, and I'll jump in. And you'll see this time it won't be visible. But if I talk to him, it should all sync up and look nicely. It does look a bit odd that the last text wasn't there and our options are here. But just to keep his text there, a common thing people ask for, this is entirely narrative specific for this fix. All we're going to do is on NPC dialog line finished, I'm just going to tell it not to set the text to empty. Pretty much. All it does is when the NPC finishes talking, it makes his speaker text disappear so the player options show. But since we've got our UI separated, we don't need that. So if we speak to him now, it says everything is for sale except my daughter and our options are there. So adding a custom UI to your game is going to be a chunk of work. It absolutely is. But it will absolutely be worth it when it's done in the end. So you can see already, just starting the game, we have a much nicer dialogue window coming along, and our weapon selection looks much better. So I'm going to go through and pretty much update all of the UI that I need to. So my dialogue, my quest window, my compass and stuff like that. And then we'll go from there. So this is just after the video. I've spent a few hours merging in the Synty UI. So the dialogue section is probably complete, to be honest. So you can see I can come up, I can interact with him. It's all there with his thumbnail. I've moved to this one because I just preferred it, really. And I've got my dialogue options over here. Click play, it changes over, and it goes to it. I am tempted to see if flipping this over to the other side here for the player's replies and having it go NPC player, NPC player works, but I'm not sure at the moment. But yeah, slowly merging the UI, and it'll be one of those tasks that I'll pick up and do every so often, just put a couple of hours in here and there, instead of bulk doing it all right here. But yeah, it's coming along nicely. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this was helpful. I know towards the end it became more plugin specific, but when you're replacing UIs in your game, it's something you just have to talk about, unless you don't use plugins at all. But I've got a lot of UI here to update, including some that Synty doesn't have a UI for yet. So they've got modular parts. Hopefully I can put something together. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. Big thank you to Synty again for sponsoring this video and sending me the interface across. It's going to make the game look really nice, and I'm happy to show it off. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.